Hi everyone, it's Christine. So tonight I am going to read Sleeping Beauty. Okay? This is Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a king and a queen. They longed to have a child. After years of waiting, their wish came true. Their daughter was born. They named her Aurora after the dawn because she filled their lives with sunshine. To celebrate her birth, the king and queen declared a holiday. Guests traveled from near and far to visit the tiny princess, including three good fairies named Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Each fairy would bless the princess with a single magical gift. Flora blessed the child with beauty. Fauna gave the gift of song. But before Merryweather could cast her spell, a gust of wind blew through the great hall. In a flash of lightning, a dark figure appeared. It was the evil fairy Maleficent, who was furious she was not invited to the party. I, too, have a gift to bestow on the child, she said with a wicked grin. Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. And with that, she disappeared in a burst of green smoke. The king and queen were panic-stricken. Flora tried to calm them. Don't despair, she said. Merryweather still has her gift to give. Ooh, there's Maleficent. Although her magic was not strong enough to undo the curse, Merryweather did have the power to help. And so with a wave of her magic wand, Merryweather declared, not in death, but just in sleep, the faithful prophecy you'll keep. From this slumber you shall wake. When true love's kiss the spell shall break. Still, the fairies thought perhaps there was an even better way to save the princess from the curse. What if they pretended to be a peasant woman and raised the princess as their own in a secret, far-off place for 16 years? If Maleficent could not find Aurora, how could she harm her? The rueful king and queen sadly agreed, knowing it was the only way they could protect their daughter from Maleficent. They watched with heavy hearts as the fairies changed themselves into humans and disappeared into the night with the princess. There they go, changing themselves into humans. By morning, the fairies and the princess arrived at an old cottage deep in the woods, which became their home. The fairies stopped using magic and pretended to be Aurora's aunts. They called her Blair Rose, so no one would learn of her true identity. That would keep her safe from Maleficent. The years passed quickly, and before the fairies knew it, Blair Rose's 16th birthday had arrived. To celebrate, the fairies planned a surprise. They would make the girl a beautiful dress and a delicious cake. But first, they had to get her out of the cottage, so they sent her to pick berries. Blair Rose enjoyed strolling through the woods. As she walked, she sang to the forest animals who would become her friends, all the while dreaming of a tall, handsome prince. Little did she know that a real prince just happened to be riding through the forest that very morning. There she is. Hear that? The prince said to his horse Samson. The sound of Blair Rose's sweet voice had drifted over him. The prince was enchanted. He had to find out where it was coming from. Eagerly he urged his horse into a gallop, but as Samson leaped over a log, the prince fell off. He landed in a creek with the most undignified splash. "No carrots for you," he scolded as he climbed out of the water. He laid his hat, cape, and boots out to dry. At the same time, he couldn't help but wonder about the voice he'd heard. It was almost too beautiful to be real. Maybe it was some mysterious being, he said. A wood sprite? Or a... But his thoughts were interrupted by the shocking sight of his wet clothes beginning to fly and hop away. Blair Rose's animal friends were stealing them. "Why, it's my dream prince," Blair Rose declared when the rabbits and birds appeared before her, dressed in the stolen clothes. "You know, I'm really not supposed to talk to strangers, but we've met before." And while the real prince looked on, hidden behind a nearby tree, Blair Rose began to sing and dance with her dressed-up forest friends. As Blair Rose turned away, the real prince quickly stepped in. When he began to sing with her, she spun around. "Oh!" she gasped. Her three aunts were always warning her to stay away from strangers, and yet there was something so familiar about him. She couldn't help but feel that they had met before. Long into the afternoon, Blair Rose and the prince sang and danced together, and before either one could help it, they had fallen in love. When Blair Rose finally returned to the surprise party that awaited her at the cottage, it was her aunts who were surprised. "This is the happiest day of my life," Blair Rose said with a sigh. Then she told them about the young man she'd just met, and how she'd invited him to the cottage that evening. "This is terrible," moaned Flora. "You must never see that young man again." She explained to Blair Rose that she was already betrothed, and that Anne had been since birth, to a young prince named Philip. "But how could I marry a prince?" Blair asked. "I'd have to be..." "A princess," Meriwether finished. The fairies then told Blair Rose about her real parents and her real name. Flora, Fauna, and Meriwether changed themselves back into fairies, wrapped the princess in a cloak, and set off for the palace immediately. They arrived at the castle just as the sun began to set. The poor princess was so sad about not being able to see the young man from the forest again that the fairies left her for a moment so she could collect herself. As soon as they were gone, a wisp of green smoke appeared and lured Aurora up a tower to a hidden room. Slowly, the smoke took the form of a spindle, and Maleficent's voice filled the air. "Touch the spindle," she ordered. Aurora pricked her finger on the spinning wheel and fell into a deep sleep. The only thing that could save her was true love's kiss. Unfortunately, Maleficent had locked the prince in her dungeon. The good fairies found him and discovered that he was Prince Philip, the same prince who was betrothed to Aurora. They gave him enchanted weapons to fight Maleficent. Though the evil fairy changed herself into a fierce dragon, she was no match for the prince's bravery, or his magic sword and shield. He soon defeated her. Prince Philip raced to the palace and knelt beside the sleeping beauty. Ever so gently, he kissed her on the lips. He sighed with relief as she opened her eyes and smiled at him. Soon a grand, joyous wedding was announced. True love had conquered all. So again, that is Sleeping Beauty.